Hello and welcome to today's webinar on what's new in ADONIS NP 5.0. If any questions come up during the course of the webinar, you can type them up and send them to us at any point. We will go over them at the end, address them if there's time left, and if not, we will follow up with you over email. All the participants are listed as anonymous. Only the host and the presenter's names will be made visible. This webinar is going to be recorded, and the link to the recording will be sent to you via email in case you want to watch it again. Without further ado, let me introduce myself and our presenter today. My name is Eugenio Lobo, and I am part of the Business Global Development team here in our Vienna office. Tom, our speaker for today, is part of our Global Business Development team, and he is based in the Irish office. He's a senior consultant and expert in BPM and EA. Once more, we would like to welcome you to today's webinar. Before we get started with our latest release, let me give you a little bit of background information about our company, as well as some facts and figures. The BOC Group was founded in 1995 as a spin-off of the University of Vienna, and it is a leading international manufacturer of software tools for globally recognized management approaches. Through constant innovation and improvement of established processes, we ensure the strong continuity of the development of our software and services. The BOC Group is headquartered in Vienna, Austria, but spans its operations worldwide through offices in Germany, Spain, Ireland, Greece, Poland, Switzerland, and France. The BOC Group is represented by two major products, ADONIS focusing on BPM and ADOIT focusing on EA. Both products offer comprehensive functionalities relating to GRC, which offers methods and mechanisms for evaluation and analysis of your risk portfolio. Our products can operate both on-premise and as software as a service. In the previous management areas, the BOC Group is not only a manufacturer, but also an experienced consulting company. Other than our products, we also offer extensive consultant services and training. If you're interested in any of these topics, please refer to our website for further information. The products of the BOC Management Office used in base scenarios to model business processes and process maps with business process management, also enterprise architectures with our ADOIT tool, and of course, we also simultaneously use our tools to document and maintain the risk portfolio and application landscapes in your organization with our GRC module. Different roles and stakeholders from the organization having different responsibilities in regards to process, architecture, and your repository are able to conduct multiple evaluation analysis techniques within the tools with the goal to prepare companies to be audit ready. A detailed overview of how our products and features can support your organization in audit preparation will be provided in the upcoming webinars this year, the schedule for which you can find on our website. Today's webinar, ADONIS NP 5.0, falls in 5 out of 6 categories that the BOC webinars this year are covering. So today we will be covering the 5 topics that are highlighted, excluding only the IT and enterprise architecture topic. Without further ado, I will pass on the mic to our presenter for today, Tom.
Okay, thanks Eugenio for the introduction. I just need to share my screen. So I would also like to welcome everyone to today's session to mark the latest release of ADONIS NP 5.0. NP in the name of ADONIS now stands for the new platform, meaning that we've basically brought the proven kind of ADONIS classic software to a new technological platform. But the software now also has a broader range of functionalities. There's more extensive configuration options, as well as more possibilities for role-based access to the environment, as we will see today. So I'll provide you with a kind of an overview of what's new in the latest release, and then shortly present some of the new innovations directly in the tool. So let's get started. So successful BPM with ADONIS is really built around the stakeholder support, or for more role-based access to the tool. So here in this slide, we can see some of the main business process management scenarios that you have available in ADONIS NP 5.0, but they're all built around the core meta model for process management. So the meta model that we have has been extended in order to address all of the needs of the various stakeholders in any organization. So we've really enriched the standard BPMN 2.0 method to make it more what we call fit for business. So we can support the typical scenarios like process design and documentation, but we can also look at our processes maybe from a more kind of higher level or a kind of managerial perspective, from a kind of a strategic point of view before kind of delving into scenarios such as process analysis and optimization, or then around governance, risk and compliance, together with business and IT alignment. So we really have a broad range of application scenarios, but all the while the business processes are always at the core of everything that we really do. But in order to carry out all of these scenarios that you see, we need to have the right people involved. So who are the people? We have the typical BPM stakeholders like our process designers or process modelers, who do all of the actual kind of modeling and drafting of the processes. We then have the process contributors who actually populate the model with relevant content. And then we obviously have the process readers who are really the kind of employees at the end of the day on the front line. So we need to make sure that each of the various stakeholders we have are well supported in their daily tasks. And with ADONIS NP, we can provide tailored access to all of these, as well as other relevant stakeholders who can be involved, such as the quality manager, or maybe an initiative owner, or even a member of the IT department down here. We have the enterprise architect who could be involved in either the business and IT alignment or more around process-based application development. So as mentioned, the core meta model at the center is really used to support all of the scenarios that we have. Making BPMN fit for business is not a new development within BOC, but we integrate it together with our own BPMS method for process modeling. So together we really see that we can tell a kind of a more detailed story around the processes, and not just providing basic documentation for the kind of process flow and the tasks and the decisions. So in the standard library, we can incorporate the roles involved, what documents, risks, controls, and IT systems as well, to add us to your kind of typical process documentation. But it really makes ADONIS NP more than just a kind of a tool for drawing nice pictures. So here we have some examples of the typical stakeholders that will have some input into the success of your BPM initiative. But they all have different kind of requirements in the use of the tool, from the modeling team, as we said, who actually designed the processes, the quality management team, who would actually be involved in reviewing the processes and making sure that the design team are following the guidelines. Then you also have the business analyst, who's really looking for kind of opportunities to improve the model processes, and even kind of requirements from a more kind of top level managerial or kind of board level perspective, who are looking to get an insight into the processes from a more strategic view. What are the key responsibilities? Where are our current risks? Are KPIs being achieved? Right down to the employees on the front line, as I mentioned, who require really a more kind of detailed step-by-step look into the actual processes that they have some involvement in. So let's first of all focus on the process designer or the process modeler, and consider, what do they really need from the tool to actually support their kind of daily tasks. So how can they actually model and document the processes in ADONIS? ADONIS NP now works off a central multi-user kind of model and object repository. It's all now purely web-based for the graphical modeling and analysis. And as I said, we support BPMN 2.0, which has been made fit for business based on our kind of 20 plus years in the market. But we also now have tooltips for process objects. So once you hover over the kind of actual object, you don't have to go in and open up the notebook to see maybe the name and the description of the model. You can also apply a state filter to the full repository, so you only actually see process models of a particular state. So for example, you may want to only see only models that have been released or published so far. So you just turn on the filter, and then the only models available are those that have that particular state. we also have a filter which you can see here for the complexity. So it's the kind of mode, basically showing either all classes available in BPMN, or you may just want to reduce it down to only show the basic process objects that are required to develop a BPMN model. So other things like we can upload kind of documents into the ADONIS database to manage all of the information more centrally rather than having to have links to an external storage location. Other functionalities like integrated translation support for more kind of international projects, as well as structured kind of formatting of text in the actual process descriptions, which then follows on to be actually included in the published reports, as well as in the textual view of the process, which makes it easier for the reader to actually follow along. So another highlight of ADONIS NP is the collaboration portal, where process teams and stakeholders can now work together on more collaboratively on the development of a process. So we think of it more like kind of social BPM or actual Facebook for process management. So you can add your comments or your feedbacks either on a model or either on the model as a whole or actually on specific objects in a process. You can upload files to support your comments. So maybe you were working in a kind of a workshop last week and there were some, whiteboard scribbles captured. So you can actually take the photo of that and actually attach it to the process to actually follow along with the suggested change. And once a comment is added, so you can see the comments here on the right-hand side, once you actually add a comment to a process, then the process automatically becomes one of your favorites, so you can then be kept up to date on what's happening in any future process development. So let's now just jump to the tool to see how ADONIS NP supports the process modeler. So we can just go in here and create a very simple process. Once I've logged in here as my kind of power user, I've got access to 3 different scenarios here. So to actually go in and model a process, we can use the design and document. So on the start page, you've got some quick links here to actually create content. So you can create some analysis, some matrices or some views or individual objects. But we can also look here into the Model Explorer. I've created a folder here for the ADONIS NP webinar for today, and we can go and create a model directly in the group here. So we'll select a business process diagram, and we can call it, okay, and say okay. So now we can see our modeling objects in the bar on the left-hand side. If I change the mode to maybe show BPMN complete, it basically just includes additional objects that you can use here to model your process. So we can just maybe model a simple process here with a pool, and we can add some lanes as well. And one here. Okay, and to actually then begin to drag and drop our objects, we've got our start event. We can add some tasks to our process, and we have an endpoint as well down here. Okay, so we can use the navigator to zoom in and out, and then to actually draw the subsequent relations, we can use the magic relation here, and it will draw the relations with nice right angles to keep everything nice and neat in the process. And we can finish it off here. Okay, so that's our basic process flow drawn. Then to actually add some context to the process, we can go in here and take a look at the Object Explorer. So within the Object Explorer, I've also included some additional objects here that we can use for today's demonstration. So if we want to add an organizational unit to the individual lanes to assign responsibility to the tasks in the process, we can open up the notebook here for the lane, and directly from the Object Explorer we can drag and drop our resource in here to assign organizational unit A to that particular lane in the process. Alternatively, you can just drag and drop again here, or we could switch to the tabular view for easier kind of updating of the data, and we can switch on our filter here for the lanes, and now we can have organizational unit 3 dragged into the cell there for the responsibility or for the resource for the, move this across so we can see. So you can just drag and drop directly into the actual tabular view here on the model. So you can switch here between graphic and tabular view. So in addition to that, we can assign roles, so individual roles for responsibilities for the tasks that we have. Again, we can just go here to the RACI view, back to our Object Explorer, and drag and drop various roles, either being a certain person responsible for, or a certain role responsible for execution, or for approving the results, who's accountable, who can be consulted, and who can be informed. So from a RACI perspective here in the process. So once you actually add the role, it then appears directly under the task, so you can see who's responsible for this particular task. Again, you can do similar for our next activity. In addition to that, to broaden the kind of description of the process documentation for the process, if we go back to task 1, we could also include some documents. Here as an input, as a data input, we may require a document, so we can just drag and drop directly in here. So you can really quite quickly begin to populate the model using the various repository objects that can be reused across multiple processes. And lastly, we can also add in IT system. So from our systems and products, our referenced application, which again can be used directly here in the notebook. So the two options to really update it is to go in directly and open up the notebook and drag and drop from the Object Explorer, or if we wanted to add another task here, so for the systems and products, you can also add relations by clicking on the little plus here to go in and select the IT system that you would like to reference to that particular task. So it's really quite easy to populate the model quite quickly. And if we zoom in here now on this individual task, we can give the task a name as well. As I mentioned, we can add structured descriptions, so we can maybe add some bullet points. So maybe there's a couple of steps that need to take place in a particular task. We can add different fonts. You can make the text bold or even different colors, and you can also attach links to other objects as well. So all of this can be added here in the kind of structured formatted description, and the format that you add here will also be carried across into any reports or into the textual view for reading the process. So once we have that done, you can see already that we can see the description added, we can see the name of the task, what role is responsible, what application is used, and we can also see that there's an input required. So really quite quickly, using the kind of web-based modeling editor here, we can really build up our process quite quickly. If you want to see where a specific role is used within the repository, we can select it here in the Object Explorer, right-click, and from the usage analysis, you can click on the references, and you'll see a pop-up here to see, okay, who's the responsible person for this particular object, and also where it's used within the process environment. So we can see that this role 1 is responsible for the right letter task that we just created. Okay. Okay, so that's just a very simple example of a process. If we now look at another kind of process model here in our banking example, we can take a look at the process landscape for the ADO Money Bank, which gives a kind of a high-level view of all of your kind of core management and support processes. So we can just zoom out a little bit. Again, from here, if you hover over the objects, so we've got the object tooltip, so we can see it's configured to display the name and the description of each of these process objects, the high-level process objects contained in our process landscape. But we can also drill down from here to the next level for the processes that are related to advising customers. And here we can drill all the way down into the detailed process model as well. So it's really using the company maps as kind of an entry point for your readers into their kind of area of the business. They can find quite quickly what processes may be related to their department. And then you can drill right down into the detailed business process and follow along and read through the process as required. In order to see where this, so we managed to find this process from the kind of company map. Again, hovering over the task now in a process, we can see there's additional attributes visualized here. It can also be configured in the administration toolkit, what attributes you would like to actually show. But we can then find where this process is, maybe in the Explorer, so we can see where it is in the actual structure, the model structure here in our model repository. So we can see that there's also an additional new version of this process that's been created. So we're currently on the version released version 2.0, but I can also see that there's now a 2.01, which means it's a new version of our release process. And by drilling in here, if we just take a look, we can also open up the collaboration stream, which I mentioned, and we can see that there's now some comments added initially by Carol, who's the actual process owner. We can expand the comments here to see, okay, the modeler replied saying a new draft is already in progress, and it'll be sent to methodical review. So once the process then is ready to be passed through the release workflow cycle, and we can check to make sure everything is done as per the request from the process owner, then we can send it through to methodical review, which is the first step of the release workflow process. There we can add a comment after we have checked the process to make sure everything is okay. The process has been validated according to the checks that are run, which are basically checks on BPM best practices around naming conventions, the kind of modeling guidelines. The BPMN syntax is also checked, and there's other kind of to-dos around. You can set up minimum documentation, so you have to make sure that certain attributes are filled before you can actually pass the model through to methodical review. And once it is, we can then finish or go to the next step and actually submit the process to business review. So this is the review from the quality assurance team who have checked the process and said everything is okay to go. And then it's sent through to business review, which actually sends the process through to the process owner for a final approval before the model is actually released. So just jumping back then, I'll just close this, and we can jump back to the slides now and just to take a look at the next stakeholder. So from the kind of contributor or the reviewer who was actually then involved in the release workflow process, they need to find out, okay, how can you actually release a process and what's the release workflow method that we follow. So you can see here the various states that your model passes through, from being just a draft process to being released and finally archived. And there's various states that need to transition through, from the methodical review to the business review. Then the process is released, and once the process released, you can see the version number changes from 0.01 on the first iteration. If it's rejected at the methodical review, then it will become version 0.02 up until it's released to become version 1.0. And then on the second iteration through, it then moves to version 1.1 all the way through to version 2.0 when it's finally released. And once version 2 is released, version 1 then is automatically archived. So it really allows for a quite comprehensive audit trail. You can see, you can add comments between transitions to make sure there is an actual audit trail to see what was proposed, what's changed, and what was finally released to the readers in the organization portal, and that we can also set up. Okay, so yeah, we've got the simple workflows where you can actually log the status with the transitions. We've got role-specific tasks and dashboards, so you actually set the various users to be either modelers, reviewers, or process owners, and then when they log into ADONIS NP, they can actually see what tasks they have for the process that they're involved in, whether they have any actions to perform. If there's a process that's been sent for review, they need to review it, or if it's been sent for final approval before release, they see that as well. And the release workflow kind of process can be configurable as well to reduce the number of steps and really be quite specific about who is actually involved in the process. So if we just jump back into the tool now, we've sent this process to Carol for approval. So we can just log out here as the ADO user, the Adonis Power user, and log in again as Carol this time. So when Carol logs in, she is one of the process owners. So she doesn't have the design and documents scenario available, so she can only control and release the processes, and now also has access to the read and explore scenario. But here in the control and release scenario, we can see what processes have some actions pending for her. So we can see here that the Create New Customer version 2.01 is here under Business Review. And we can see what actions we can perform here. So we can either reject the process or release the process. And we see here in the state that it's actually under Business Review as it's filtered here. So we can open up the process directly from here. Again, select it maybe in the selected in the Explorer. And we can then maybe compare it against an archive process, so to see what's actually changed since version 1. So from our current process to the original version 1 process, we can kind of do a model comparison, which shows you graphically what's changed. So if we just zoom out here a little bit and then scroll across, so we've got our original process here on the left and our new version of the process that was changed according to the comments that were added in the collaboration stream. So we can see that there are some relations that were removed here as new activity was due to be performed in parallel here about performing the Know Your Customer activities. So we can see graphically what's changed, what's added is in green, what's removed is in red, and also down below we got a tabular representation of actually what's changed as well, together with some attribute changes. So this is kind of a really nice way to actually, for the process owner to see what's changed from the previous version. You can also export it to Excel to actually perform some additional analysis. And yeah, then once the process owner is happy that the current process is okay, we can then complete the actual release workflow cycle and release the process. Add a comment to say yes, everything is okay if necessary. And then, as I mentioned on the slide, version 2.0 or 3.0 is then created. And if we just check our archived folder, we now have the audit trail here from version 1 to version 2, and version 3 is finally down here in our kind of productive repository. So the archived one is where the archive models go, and not all users would be set up to maybe be able to see the archived processes there. Okay, so just back to the slides then quickly. Our next kind of stakeholder here is the process reader. So how can a process reader access all of the process knowledge that they need, or that's really related to their kind of daily business? And we can basically set up multiple entry points to the process information for process readers using the kind of organization portal. So it's a kind of read-only access into your repository. So it's really personalized entry points for the readers with a specific defined start model can also be added. It's similar to the kind of HTML export that you will be being familiar with from Adonis Classic, but this is more of a real-time view of the current state of the process landscape rather than just a kind of a snapshot in time, which is what the kind of HTML export was represent. So in addition to the kind of organization portal, the kind of various entry points, we can have we've simplified how a user can read the process using the kind of textual process representation to actually view the content. The reader can also then kind of click through the process, click the links here at the decision points to jump down to the next task in the process. But you also get an overview here of the various resources that are involved in each task of the process. So you can see who's responsible, you can see what documents are involved, and what associated risks and IT systems. But the reader is also then presented with kind of dashboards that are populated with processes and data that are really only related to the roles that are assigned to that reader. But the reader is then also free to add additional roles to actually see what processes additional kind of roles are involved with. The reader can also set kind of favorites for themselves to make it easy to find as maybe important processes. And this kind of specific personalized reader access really reduces the overhead on the kind of central administrators as well. So just moving back to the tool, we're still logged in here as Carol. So we can now just switch to the Read and Explore scenario, and we can just uncheck the filter. So the state filter, as I mentioned, we can actually then, if I switch it on, we can turn on to only show me release processes or only show me the draft processes here. But we'll just leave it off for the moment. So here we can see, if we maybe take a look at what's changed since last week, we can see there's been lots of activity in the repository as a whole. We can see if anybody has assigned us any tasks to do, but it's also here around my processes and my company map. So this is specific to Carol's user, who's been assigned the roles that we see here. The ones with the asterisks are ones that have been added, and then it basically filters what's shown down below to actually show you processes that you're either involved in as a responsible or as an owner or as a process manager, for example. But directly from here, you can also go in and actually generate some views. So we can create a matrix view here to maybe check about what roles are actually responsible for the process activities in the process that we were looking at earlier. Oh, that's not the one. We want to create the new customer, so the one that we just released. We can just take a look at the RACI matrix for that. So again, it just shows you the process name, all of the activities in the process, and what roles are involved and what involvement they have, whether they're responsible, accountable, or if they need to be informed, for example. So it's really just easy you can do it from anywhere really, but directly from the dashboard, it's quite nice to be able to just go in and analyze the process using the predefined views that are available. Okay, just back to the slides then. So another kind of role or stakeholder that can be involved is the process analyst or the business architect. And as I mentioned, it's really up to these guys to be able to communicate with the management and kind of board level executives about the current state of the process landscape and really look for kind of improvements and optimization potential. So ADONIS supports them, again, with the view like we just seen, to analyze the kind of contents of the repository. We can look at the RACI matrix as we saw, or other portfolio or compliance matrix, but it's basically just analyzing the existing relations and content that's been added to the repository by the process modeler and the process designer. But to really kind of create more of an integrated management system, we can also support the other stakeholders, as we saw at the beginning, such as the risk or control manager or the initiative or change manager, with more personalized dashboards. And this really, enhances the power of ADONIS NP to be able to make use of the documentation that the modelers provide, as well as all of the kind of relations that exist in the meta model to really present the information in dashboards. So we've got one here for the risk manager to see kind of an overview of all of the risks that they're responsible for, statistics, or really an overview of how up to date the data is, from the kind of initiative owner or the change manager to kind of see an overview of all of the initiatives together with their status, how well it's doing, how up to date the data is. You can see in just various views and kind of portlets here to represent the data. So some of the highlights then, as we've seen, we saw the object tooltips to actually present the reader with information once they hover over an object, which can be configured in the administration tool. With our one-click tryouts and with the 30-day free trial, we've also included some tutorial videos to really make sure you get the the kind of most out of your trial period. So to really kind of kickstart your evaluation, you can take a look at the videos to get going. Our search functionality has been enhanced to actually highlight the keywords, so that the found search term are now highlighted in yellow, both in the result table, also in the notebook when you open it, and also when you double click a cell to display details such as within a description. The search term is highlighted in yellow. The multiple organization portals, we touched on that to provide tailored access for all the stakeholders. You can also configure a kind of a voting mechanism within the release workflow. So it's really including more stakeholders to grant voting rights on the release of a process or in the current state of a process to more stakeholders to get them involved. We can apply the status filter, which we saw on the repository, and also the model comparison is now configurable as well. So you can decide what attributes should be included in the comparison, and also ensure that certain users have access to be able to compare the current model state with an archived version. So as I mentioned, sometimes with the access rights, the readers don't have access to the archived models, but you can now configure it. So even if they don't have access, they can still use it for comparison reasons. Okay, some additional changes that we have to ADONIS 5.0. One of the highlights as well is the property filter improvements. So the administrator can restrict the use of a property filter from either certain application scenarios, and also the property filter can be set for a model comparison to actually reduce the number of attributes that you're considering for a single comparison as well. So here are just a kind of an overview of the highlights that we touched on today. I think we covered the majority of them here. But if you haven't already, I would really recommend you sign up to the 30-day free trial of ADONIS NP 5.0 for yourself. As I mentioned, there's tutorial videos there, so you can just go into the Knowledge Center once you get signed up and access. The videos are directly within the ADONIS environment, so it's quite a nice way to actually get a quick overview before you start using the tool. But finally, I'd just like to summarize once again how ADONIS NP 5.0, together with ADOIT for Enterprise Architecture Management, how it supports you in enabling business transformation. So the BOC Management Office can our aim is to really help you better keep track of all of track and control of all changes that are made. And we saw the kind of graphical model comparison, but we can create the different graphical views and analysis and reports, as well as the various role-specific dashboards. So today we saw the control and release dashboard for the process owner's involvement in the release workflow process, but we can also set up the organization portal, which can be shared to all process readers for publishing the kind of release content, and that will also get more stakeholders involved as well with the kind of collaboration stream for improved cooperation on the development of your process models. Okay, so that's the end of my part of today's webinar. So I'd like to pass you back to Eugenio, who will conclude today's session. So thanks again, Eugenio.
Thank you, Tom. So as a conclusion, I would like to provide you with an outlook of some of our upcoming webinars. As we said earlier, BOC Group webinars this 2017 fall into these 6 main categories at the top. And here you can find 3 webinars that we have in the coming months. Actually, we have 2 this month and 1 the next month. And so next week we'll be looking at optimizing business processes with methods and best practices. So we will be discussing some of the best practices that we have come up with in the last 20 years. Also on the 27th, we will be looking at a webinar regarding BPMN 2.0 with our extension BPMN Fit for Business. So this is an extension that we have also developed to make modeling more practical, more simple, and more complete. And lastly, at the end of August, we will have a webinar regarding the implementation of the General Data Protection Regulation. So this is a regulation that will be introduced in 2018. And in this webinar, we will introduce some extension packages that we have developed in order to help you deal with this data protection regulation. For more details on these webinars, please log on to our website, and in the webinar section you will find more details about each one of the webinars, and you will also be able to sign up for any one of them. As Tom mentioned, we have the 30-day free trial of the tool that was presented today. So you can sign up for 30 days and you will be able to test the 5.0 version of Adonis. Feel free to do so on our website. Once more, on behalf of Tom and myself, I would like to thank you for attending today's webinar, and we hope to see you in our next webinars. See you soon.